Okay, so I'll just stick to your questions. So firstly, where have DAOs evolved from? So this is just for contextual background. I think actually,
And Matan, just real quick, because I think everybody's got an interesting background, but you in particular have an interesting background what you were doing before you got into DAOs.
right. So I'll mention that. So I've came from the academy. I've been doing theoretical physics, if you know string theory. So I've done my PhD in postdoctoral research in string theory. And in parallel to that, actually, I've been involved in cooperatives. I founded local organic food cooperatives and communal gardens, and I was particularly interested in cooperatives. And when you think of where DAOs evolved from, like the first immediate answer is, of course, from smart contracts. When the first people thought about, well, smart contract implementation, basically Vitalik Buterin and a few others, then one of the most immediate and exciting use cases were DAOs. So back then it was kind of like imaginary creatures. But if you think about it more culturally, DAOs really came from different places, or were based on different cultures. One of them is, of course, cooperatives. For me, that was my entry point. I was involved in and interested at cooperatives for about 20 years. And when I saw Vitalik's white paper, this is the first thing to come to my mind was, okay, that's how cooperatives going to look like in the future at scale. So millions of people cooperatives, digital cooperatives. Of course, it also grew on the culture, on the shoulders of open source culture, collaboration, open source collaboration. But also, I think much of it was impacted by the movement of social networks, the open discussions of large groups. And another angle is the common-based pre-production, which is a very favorite angle in some communities. So what did we see, in the last few years that is working, and maybe something that are not working, or most things that are still not working? So firstly, what's working? I think the most important thing is the signals of interest and passion. Like, it's quite amazing that with almost no, real product. If we go back to the DAO in 2016, which Griff was involved in, and I was involved in submitting a proposal to, then it was quite amazing. There was this product, the DAO, that did not have an interface, and it was like as shitty as it can get, and it raised $150 million. So the passion, the level of passion and interest is just insane, and we still see it today, even after the conservatism that came after the hack. We have platforms. Yes, we have nice platforms: Argon, DAOstack, Colony, Moloch, Common Stack, and all are nice platforms. But to be honest, all of them are very, very early stage. Not platforms you would think users would use in 2020, and still hundreds of people are passionate around that. So I think the signals of interest and passion is incredible, which is good. It's critical. Then, in terms of simple governance flow, I think just like running decisions, I think we got it. Like, yes, there are many ways, and I'll also mention some problems and many different modalities, but overall, I would say, yes, we know how to make decisions on the blockchain, and that's good. And also, we have simple DAO platforms. Well, they can organize information. We have dashboards. We can know how to run voting, financing, some of which Griff has mentioned. So these are kind of like working. What are the challenges? Firstly, I think the biggest one is mainstream, and specifically the UX or Web3 UX. So still, there is a too large of a distance between the UX that the blockchain provides us and the mainstream ability to actually use it. I think there is still too big of a gap. Of course,
Tom,
yeah.
Have you learned what have you learned from Moloch DAO and the success that they've had in terms of kind of the road to mainstream?
Well, I don't know. I learned a lot from Moloch DAO. I'm not sure specifically about the mainstream. I think Moloch DAO is still very much oriented at the crypto communities. I will actually double click more about that in the next slide. But I think one thing that I did learn actually from Moloch DAO is simplicity. Really, really simple interface. Still, I don't think it's adapted for mainstream, but I think simplicity is a killer thing to take into account if you want to reach the mainstream. So yeah, a second I think big bottleneck is large scale. Of course, we see platform that can organize 50 people, but we haven't seen, and I think DAOstack is trying to push that to a few hundreds, but we haven't yet seen really DAOs of few hundred active members or thousands of members. I think this is a big opportunity, but still a challenging one. I think orientation, complex decision, context. We've seen DAOs that are making simple decision, yes, no about this decision, but we didn't see yet the toolings that allow a DAO, a collective intelligence, to make contextual decision. This decision X given that decision Y, this decision X inside of decision Y, and so on and so forth. We haven't seen that yet. I think this requires more toolings that we don't have yet. I think incentive design, a lot of people are speaking about incentive design, and we have made a lot of mileage on that. Yet I wanna say out loud, I think we don't have very good designs for DAO yet. It's kind of like the DAO business model. So DAOs are still not having sustainable business models. I would say we don't have a true product market fit. We are mostly based on enthusiasm of early adopters, which is good, but we don't have real product market fit yet. And then of course also community dynamics is something that is challenging always and still in DAOs. So my unique perspective, I'll try to draw a few of them. So one's of course scale, which is our strongest focus, I would say. And so we have our solution for that, which we call holographic consensus. We have an early version of holographic consensus, and we will release this year a much more advanced protocol for that. I'm sure there other people will come with other solutions, and I'm really anticipating to see them. I think another unique perspective.
Can you just give a real quick description of what holographic consensus?
Sure. Holographic consensus is just, so the simple tension on your face is basically, if you want many people to be really engaged in DAO, it means that not only they're voting. So let's say you have 1 million people, just for the sake of it, and they're voting, but they're really engaged such that you also have 1 million people proposing, which means that you have every time you have million proposals on the table. Now, how do you screen million proposals? If you have million people screening million proposals, or even just 10,000 proposals, it means that each proposal will see very little fraction of voting. And how do you ensure that the results of those voting actually reflect the larger majority, is in coherence with the larger majority? So holographic consensus is a protocol that basically lets you make decisions by small audiences. So 100 people can make a decision for 1 million people, but in a way that guarantees that those 100 people decisions actually reflects the 1 million people opinion. And the way that it happens is because there is a whole prediction market running on the side, or with professionals like traders, and they basically are constantly making bets or predictions whether the little group's decisions actually reflect or represent or representative of the larger group opinion. And whenever they don't, those make predictions that signal out the misalignment, and also in a way don't let those decisions to be approved. So this is roughly a 1 minute on holographic consensus. Another unique perspective that I'm really running strongly into is the conversation between UX and decentralization. So for a long time, we were insisting on full decentralization, and we're paying with lousy UX. And I think that if we're going to go to the mainstream, firstly, we have to not compromise UX, but also we can compromise a little bit about decentralization, because for the mainstream audience, it will be somewhat forgivable. And then thereafter, over time, as the technology matures up, we can maintain the level of UX, but get more and more decentralization. So I'm leaning more towards compromising a little bit decentralization and not compromising UX, so that I can go to address the mainstream. Now, I think some angles here is that most of the efforts so far were been placed on more corporational aspect, or if you want, maybe gig or open source collaboration aspect of DAOs. So a bunch of people working together to produce something. And I want to argue that DAOs could go much more into the social realm. So more like Facebook groups that are self-funded. And this is also conversing with professionals versus freelancers versus anyone. And I'm arguing that we can drive DAOs right now to anyone, to mainstream. This is also related with the way that people interact with information. So when you speak about hundreds of professionals, they want to all be involved in the project. You're more leaning towards dashboards which gives you high level for your orientation, but less flow. Or I think, and I'm claiming that when you go more to the social element, to the mainstream, to the large scale, you would start interacting with the DAO more via feeds. You have less orientation, less control of the information that you gather. You don't see the full picture, but you can flow much faster into it. And this also converses with the idea of going mobile first, integrated chats, engaging applications and notifications. What DAO will evolve into in 1 year or in the end of this year and 5 years. So I'm predicting that in the end of this year, we'll have the first real product market fit. So real DAOs, sustainable DAOs, I would say with over 1,000 members, and out of them, 100 will be active, like truly active members. We will start to see replicable models. We'll start to see early mainstream DAOs in the mainstream. And in 5 years, I think we'll see the DAOs are the mainstream. I think we'll get to around 100 million users in 5 years, or tens of millions if I'm a little bit more conservative. I think we'll see wide adoption, wide area of use cases. And finally, just to close it up, just showing you, so you already got my unique perspective, so I can show you where we're driving that perspective. So basically, we are launching a new project, which is now in advanced stage of building. We call it the Common app. And it's basically just that. It's taking DAOs to the mainstream around cause-driven collaborative networks, something like social networks, but with funding and collaboratively managed. So these are just early screens. I will not go into deep with them, just showing some pics and feelings of them. So, you can browse through different groups, to different commons, and you can get into them and see their stats and also the proposals that are made in there. You can go into proposals and read them. You can vote with a simple click. You don't need to know anything about blockchain. In fact, you don't need to know that this is running on the blockchain. You don't see the blockchain. It's all Web 2 level UX. And you can see sort of like it can be a Facebook campaign that is funded to grow further the common. You can see there is a thread of posts. Anyone can place a post. You can comment on post, have a discussion. You can found your own common, and of course, then start to share it with friends. And it's sort of like, I would say, Facebook meets Kickstarter meets or GoFundMe meets DAOstack. So you have this sort of like social group element together with the campaigns, funding campaigns, together with the governance of the funds reach. So you can have like sort of like campaign funding goals. Once you reach those funding goals, suddenly the funds become available for usage for the DAO. And then, as I mentioned before, the interaction with the DAO is mostly happening through a feed where all the information streams to you rather than you looking for that information. So I think we can stop here.